Hello, you are listening to the Short Film Podcast, where we filmmakers watch and analyse as many short films as humanly possible. My name is Bernadetta. I'm a film director and producer. I'm joined by producer and director of photography Matthias Jan.
Hey.
And producer Jamie Mills.
Hello.
In this episode, we'll be breaking down short films that explore racial issues. And so with us, we've got Arnica Miakista, a documentary maker and creator, and recently released short film I COOLIE. It's a documentary that explores racial issues, so please tell us more.
Thanks for having me on the podcast today, guys.
Thank you for being on.
Pleased to have you on.
I moved to the UK about 3 years ago, and I'm of Indian heritage.
Yeah.
But I introduced myself as South African. So when I said that I was South African, people were like, "But you look Indian."
Yeah.
And so that's how I COOLIE sort of came about, in just kind of exploring my heritage, my identity, and giving people a little bit of the history that was lost and untold about like British India and colonialism and how Indians migrated outside of India, and it was through indentured servitude.
It was originally a short, is that right?
Yeah, it's currently still a short film, yeah.
And you're wanting to turn it into a feature?
Yes, so we're in development at the moment, turning it into a feature. So that's really exciting. And yeah, it's been a long process.
You're also part of so many other projects and things going. Tell us more. You've got so much going on. What's happening?
I guess that's the life of being a creative. You have to have all your pots boiling. So currently, I'm not physically working on any production, but most of my personal projects are in development. 2 of them are documentaries, and one is a period piece TV drama series, which is based off I COOLIE and that sort of time, set in Durban, South Africa in 1860s during the sugar plantation. So very exciting. I think development is a really long and hard process, but it's quite fulfilling when things do spark interest from people.
Yeah.
So.
I think development's an area of documentary film that a lot of people don't really hear about or know about. I was at BFI DocSoc networking event a couple of weeks ago. Telling us all about the different funding options there are, about the commissioners, about all the different processes to get your documentary made, and such a useful session, learning all about how a documentary is made from start to finish, and all the IPs you got to acquire, all the planning, all the contacts you got to get. I feel like people don't appreciate how much goes into making a documentary.
And I'm going to call you after this. Clearly you have information that I don't know. But yes, I think people just don't really know. But documentary filmmaking for me is just, it's been such a learning process because there's so much research. And once you open that world, you're just like, oh my word. As a human being, I have so many barriers to sort of dismiss in my mind, and I'm just open to knowledge. You have to be a complete sponge. So it has been the most amazing experience. And I've never thought of ever considering to be a documentary filmmaker. So, yeah.
I think what's quite interesting about I COOLIE is that you spoke, or you were thinking a lot while in the process of making it, about the style of it, which I think is something sometimes documentarians kind of forget about. They get so into the story and the research of the story that they don't necessarily think about it. So what was the kind of stylistic thinking for I COOLIE? What were you aiming for? What do you think, how has that evolved? Do you hear what I mean? And then what are you thinking for feature films?
Yeah, I think because it was such a huge topic, indentured slavery, and because no one was knowledgeable about it, that was the hardest thing about the short film, and obviously within the time constraints of a short film. And we really wanted to be really edgy and creative. The thing about documentary filmmaking, there isn't really a box with that genre. And so it is quite experimental, and you can play. And so that's what we decided to do. And we wanted it to be very creative and artistic, but then also quite traditional in terms of its talking heads and archive. At the moment, it hasn't really found its form. So I think where the short film sits, it's just sort of an introduction to it. And we've noticed what works and what doesn't. So the things that really spark interest and what works is actually the more artistic, creative, experimental side of things, which I think documentary is still sort of exploring. But in terms of the feature, it's completely different. It's more reflective, and it's more of a personal sort of journey following my search for identity and ancestry.
That choice to make it more personal, is that the kind of response that you've had in terms of the things that people have connected with, is when it feels like it's personally connected to you?
Yes, I think the short film at the moment, we took a bit of a risk, and we made it a collective story, which we thought would be best. But I think people want to know about your personal journey. It's a powerful journey, and it has more weight because it's more relatable. And in the short film, people were surprised that I wasn't in it because I've been telling the story for so long, and like, you know, it's so personal and I'm passionate about it. And so that connection was less. And so, you know, it was kind of like a history lesson at the moment in the short film. Whereas I think with the personal journey, people are taken on this journey and they experience things and they connect with what you're saying, even though it might be like a whole new world. So, yeah.
Plus, when it's just one person that they focus on, it's so much easier to connect and to kind of like you said, relate and such.
Absolutely.
And that leaves so much more of like a lasting impact as well, I find.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just comes down to the simple fact of the power of your own story.
I also think there's something about topics like that they're challenging. You know, they challenge people. They challenge people's perceptions of history. They're complex ideas, and it's a complex history. So people need an inlet into it. Do you know what I mean? I think there's always a concern. So we did an episode a few weeks ago on LGBT films.
Yeah.
You know, we were discussing. There was a film explored someone who was having on a journey about their gender identity, and I think that's such a complicated issue. That's something that people don't really understand and they can't really get their head around. The way the film was structured was that it was a teenage coming-of-age film that also dealt with that. And because you had that immediate jumping in point of everyone can relate to what it's like being a teenager growing up, that smaller jump to, well, that's what it's like to, you know, to be on that journey is easier and more accessible.
Absolutely.
And I think when you have someone that you can empathize with and relate to, and then to emotionally understand what those experiences are like, the jump is smaller, and it, you know, you can connect so much simpler,
Yeah.
so much easier.
I think we're so like, oh, we don't want fact. Like
Yeah.
we're, you know, fact is just like, okay, you read a paper. So we're seeking for connection and understanding. Like as much as we still learning to be kinder and compassionate, I think that's what we seek, and that's why it's so important to take people on your personal journey and not be afraid of exploring that as an individual.
Just on journey, you've had quite an interesting journey, because you started out as an actor.
Yes. Oh, God. I did. I don't miss it, which is weird. But maybe because I haven't been in it for a long time. But yes, I started off as an actress. I even went to a musical theater school. So I can tap dance. No.
Brilliant.
Kinda, not really. Actually, if you ask my friend, she was like, that's a lie. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's quite an interesting question, because being a person of color in South Africa, and especially an Indian girl in South Africa, I just felt that I wasn't really getting the opportunities to explore my abilities, because they just, you know, South Africa is a very new sort of democracy, and so our industry is quite small. So in terms of like script writing and directors and talent, there was, you know, fewer of. So the roles that were available were minimal for Indian girls, and they were very stereotypical. And there's only so much that you can do. And then I felt that I just wasn't growing as an actress. I'd have like one audition, and I'd be lucky sometimes to get that one audition in the 12 months. But it was mainly, it just wasn't pushing me because the industry wasn't big enough. And this is now 12, 15 years ago that I've had this problem. And now we see this sort of resurgence of it, about representing people of color on screen. So it's kind of weird to think that that's where I was 15 years ago and why I made the shift into production. Yeah. But yeah, it was because I never really got the opportunity to really exercise that craft.
And explore it, yeah.
Do you feel like if you were coming into the industry now, do you feel like you'd have more opportunities? Do you feel like it's changed?
I feel like it's changing. I feel like, yes, because people are more aware of that box, which kind of peeves me a little, because now it's about that diversity checkbox. But I have to see it as an opportunity, and I think that's amazing. That there are small changes, and it is an opportunity to enter the industry. And who knows, maybe I'll sign up to an acting agent after this. But yeah, maybe. I definitely think it's changing. Definitely.
So as you kind of touched on there is a lot more films now in terms of opportunities for people of colour in cinema, and there's also a lot more films that deal with race quite explicitly, I think. Is there something that you look for in a film that's going to explore those issues? Is there anything that is an immediate kind of turn off and like, oh God, I'm not going to watch that because I know it's going to do it like that?
Yeah, I think the fact that there is a person of color on screen is like the hook.
Yeah.
So just having people that look like you and represent you on screen is amazing. But I think the the downside of that is that there's been so many stereotypes, and I think that's the difficult thing, because we want a place, but people are just so caught up in how they view people through their bias and through their stereotypical things. So it's a hard one, but I just do believe like there's stages, and we are just making progress. And the first step is to just have them on screen, and then the second step would be like, okay, let's delve more into what can they offer and how do we see them past the stereotypes.
Jeremy, were you touching a bit on films in particular which deal with the topic of race, and like what films like you would want to be part of?
I'll tell you, I've got a very specific example in my mind. Green Book from this year, right? Which I think won Best Film at the Oscars.
Yes.
There's lots of things that are good about that film, but it overall just felt incredibly trite and without any real like nuance or insight into the issue. And that's where I'm less interested in films that are going to explore that, is if it's going to offer a very simple solution. Because it feels like the fundamental message of that film, or the underlying thing, is that if we want to get rid of racism and we want to have kind of racial equality, it almost feels like the message of that film is just stop being, white people should just stop being racist. And obviously that long term probably is the solution. But it's more nuanced than that, and it's not just about a collective decision that a certain character makes, and it's not.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely. But I think that in terms of Green Book, because I feel the exact same way, it was kind of the easier checkbox. And it checked all the boxes in terms of the Oscars, and we all know that the Oscars is quite a politically driven thing. So I know what you're saying, but I think they're trying to make that shift, and it's not something that can be a drastic shift, and I think people are impatient. And so we do also need to sort of step back a bit and be a bit more patient with it, because it's not something that can just switch overnight. And I think that they are now starting to be more aware. And even though that was kind of like maybe the easier call, if you look at all of the Oscar wins last year, Green Book was kind of the storyline. It was kind of like, well, let's just give it to that one, you know, to sort of balance out the wave of like, hey, people of color winning Oscars, let's just balance it out with this one.
It was the safe choice.
Just give it to them.
It's a safe choice, that's what I was trying to get at, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think with Green Book, it might not speak to people who are kind of like a bit more advanced with their attitudes towards race and such, but I think there's still very much people out there who might have needed to seen it like Green Book shows it, like almost like a slap, like, you are being racist. There is another option.
Yeah, I love that,
that
actually. That is true.
Because there's still those people out there who might just need a different way to kind of overcome their racial attitudes. But I know what you mean, it was very like on the nose kind of thing. The video was directed and written by Randy Yang, and it kind of explores a woman's racial remarks towards a homeless black person that are captured on video by two teenage black girls that leads into quite a big confrontation. Here's a clip.
It's not about that, girl.
You need more than this.
No, I don't have any change. Every time I pass by here, I've never given you money. So why do you insist on harassing me?
Whoa, lady. I'm not harassing you.
Are you even allowed to squat here?
Oh, so you own the block now, huh?
This is a good neighborhood. Kids, families live out here. So please, just do us all a favor and move your things elsewhere.
All right, lady. And where would that be?
I don't know. Whatever neighborhood you came from.
Matthias, you were the one that brought this short film forward. Why did you bring it forward? What did you like about it? How did you think it like explored racial issues?
So what I enjoyed about this film is, for me, it brought up a discussion. Like, it wasn't completely black and white what's going on, and there was a big like deliberation of what's the right thing for these two black girls to do. Is this white woman racist, or is this just a bad moment for her? Is it worth ruining her life over this one moment, or is that completely reasonable? For me, it created a real internal debate of like what's 100% right in this situation. To me, ended with that answer of like everything's grey, and a lot of stuff with race ends up being quite grey. So I liked how it explored race.
I did enjoy it. I don't know. There was something about it that didn't quite click with me that I'm sure. I kind of agree with you, though, that I think the really interesting thing about it is the way it explores call-out culture, essentially. That what that woman did was awful. Does she deserve to have her whole life ruined for it? And that is such an interesting ethical debate. And I think maybe part of my issue with the film is that I don't know. I didn't feel like it necessarily dived into that as much as it could. But I do love the broad concept of the way of exploring that in terms of a very real-world scenario. But yeah, it was interesting. I think there's lots to really like about it.
Nika, you said this was your least favourite.
Yeah, I think because I completely agree with the boys. Like, there was nothing that really grabbed me, and I wasn't like moved by it. But again, it deals with the call-out culture and how race is this gray area, and how do we go about being right or wrong, and
Yeah.
questions this internal battle of like what we are trained to think and how we perceive because of our own like biases, how how that affects people, and
Yeah.
so then the question of ethics and right and wrong, and and then within your whole your bubble, because within the bubble of the two the two African girls, it was then they became into conflict with each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it does explore that, but it didn't really, like I said, leave a lasting impression
Okay.
on
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
But it did get me debating and thinking about how we all just need to be really aware. And it is
Yeah.
really a difficult one when we don't really know what is right and wrong.
Yeah.
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 What were your thoughts, Benny?
I kind of agree with all of you. So I did enjoy the film, and it made me think about the debate and what would I do in that situation. And it kind of presented both sides. Both of them. None of them were presented well or portrayed well, which is so interesting because when you read like the log line or something, or you automatically think, oh, I'll be on the side of the two black girls. But it doesn't. It's not like that. And so that was really interesting. And I think so often now we're so ready to be like defensive, which I think is good. Like, but this film kind of made me think again. It's such a unique situation, and
I think on the same sort of
yeah.
thought process there, but like for me, the most powerful part of this film was when the girls have an altercation, and she's like, well, this white lady just looks at us as like, we're desperate for this. We these black, girls that just want this, and what do you think she thinks of us? And the powerful part for me was when she asked the white lady, like, what do you see when you look at me? And she said, a teenage black girl. And I think that's so important, and it takes this power back because there was a perception of like, well, white people are racist and they don't care. And she's going, no, I see you as you are. There's no other things, like I see you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing, and that's, I think, the message that he was trying to say is that we have these preconceived ideas. We've been so taught, black, white, Indian, whatever you are, whatever color you are, you come with your own set of belief systems that are so conditioned that you push it onto other people. And unless you have situations like this, you give people that sort of benefit of the doubt, and you understand that, oh, that's something that I made up in my head,
And it's actually the first time, in a kind of interesting parallel to that we get to see the white woman almost as a full person.
Yeah.
Because we only see her interaction out of context, that one moment from her life, and as an audience, you instinctively judge her. Like, your view of her is so negative throughout most of this film. And then it's only towards the end, when you get to see the fuller picture of her, the fuller picture of what her life is like, you relate to her, and she's not justified, but she's more understandable. You realise it's a person that is probably deep down a good person that made a horrendous mistake and did something really stupid, rather than someone who is just fundamentally evil. you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because we all do it. Like, we all make some kind of stupid mistake that when you look back and you're like, why? Like, whether I said that, or why did I do that, or why did I hurt that person like that. But in moments of time, you do sometimes just have that kind of like quick, you just blabber something out that you weren't meant to, or you wouldn't actually mean. And so I think this film kind of like really shows that in that.
Absolutely. And I also think that it shows too like how reactive we have become. So like everything is a reactive thing. It's like immediately, I'm going to react to this, I'm going to video it, I'm going to put it online. She's having a bad day, she screams at the black homeless guy. It's all very reactive. And unless you really give it time, which it does, and then you see this sort of, okay, everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. Like we got to just respond rather than react.
What do you guys think about being like one long take? Do you think, I don't know, I wasn't sure about it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about it either, because I feel like there was lots of moments which would have worked better if it was shot and edited together in a more traditional way. Like, and especially the like fight scene, it doesn't look great because of they're doing it in one take. They can't get the angles which make hits look more impactful and stuff like that. Like, it detracted from some moments, but I understand why they went for it, because I think it's the intention of replicating the idea of when the girls are filming the women, it's all like from a cell phone, it's all one take, it's not edited together, it's like real and natural, and they wanted to replicate that in the way they shot
Oh,
the
I
film.
see. I didn't see it that way, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think that not having it in one take, this is probably why Jamie and I feel like maybe that's why we didn't really connect to it as much.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe because those are the tools generally you'd use to try and connect you with someone. You know,
Yes.
you'd get a nice little close up where you'd see it from an angle their point
Yeah.
of view, and you don't get the
Yeah.
opportunity to do that. You
maybe
are
they-
watching this as kind of a disinterested third party
Yeah.
almost. Sorry.
But maybe that was intentional. Maybe they didn't want you to connect with any of them. They wanted you to stay as kind of like detached from the situation, so you could create your own impression or challenge your own ideas and values without getting into them, which isn't conventional. It's not what you usually do, but because they do show both sides of the story and try and get you to like empathize with all of them, maybe that was purposeful. So maybe if they put you in a certain viewpoint, you naturally kind of pick up that person's, the character's viewpoint and stuff. And so
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. We've talked about this before, on one of a long time ago, about whether if the film's purpose becomes about the point it's making rather than as an enjoyable piece of art, whether that's still valid. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So with me, concern would be whether they have an interesting message and an interesting story to tell, but whether that has overridden the kind of more artistic elements that would have made it a really interesting short film, and whether they've kind of sacrificed some of those more artistic elements.
For me, how much attention they put into the artistic side or the point they're trying to make, that doesn't change how like valid of an art form it makes for me. That more just affects how good of an art form it is for me.
Yeah, I think this is what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree. So I explained my point very badly. That's always the worst, when someone starts going, no, I disagree, and they start explaining your position. It's like, no, that's what I said. I just messed it up. I'm sorry.
what do you guys think about the acting?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, like I said, I think this is, it didn't really quite, it's just level for me.
Yeah.
There was no,
Yeah.
I didn't think it was terrible. I didn't think it was brilliant.
I worry a bit that like the two black characters were kind of more stereotypical in the film, and they were portrayed in a more stereotypical way. And then it was only really the white women who was like breaking conventions in terms of how they portrayed her character. So the white woman breaks conventions, as in when we first see her, you instantly think, oh, she's a horrible racist woman. But then they show that she's a three-dimensional character. She's like a real person, and like this is just one bad moment rather than what like her only defining characteristic. But with the two black girls, like I feel like I wouldn't call them two-dimensional characters, but they're more stereotypical characters.
But I suppose they also have that conflict
Yeah.
about whether to post it on, social media. And then one of them says, I won't post it on social media and I won't take the money. So I think she does have a shift.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know about the other black girl. I'm sorry, I don't know their names. But the other black girl, who's a little bit more, like, aggressive. Yeah, I'd probably agree with you. I'd say she was fairly two-dimensional.
There's also a scene at the beginning of this which I feel like is set to establish them as characters. And I'm not necessarily sure what the purpose of that is, because I suppose we see that they're, just from like a filmmaking, storytelling point of view, I guess it establishes that they're friends and that there's a kind of pre-existing relationship there.
Yeah.
That scene did nothing for me, yeah.
Yeah, it felt...
It's so like forgettable. I can't think what they talked
Yeah.
about.
I have no idea what they're talking about.
But again, maybe that was exactly the intention of the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Just make them ordinary. Yeah.
To make
Yeah.
them this everyday, people
Yeah.
having
millennials,
this
yeah.
discussion and having us discuss it like this.
Yeah. As a fun hypothetical, if you guys were in that situation, you've recorded that woman behaving in that way. Obviously, it's easy to know from a rational point of view what should be done, I think, which would be to maybe talk to her in a calm... I mean, I don't know. But it feels like instinctively the right thing to do would be to talk to her, explain to her why her language was wrong, but it's not justified to ruin her whole life for. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe, yeah. But I feel like when you see that situation, your first instinct is you assume that she's actually racist and that talking to her rationally won't work, because of when you're dealing with someone who's like completely racist, like rational talking doesn't work most of the time. Like it's not that simple.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I don't...
with her, because of this was just one bad moment, like talking to her would have worked, and like that is
Yeah.
like kind of the best outcome.
I don't think I wouldn't have recorded in the first place. Yeah, that's just not my instinct. And B, I would have like talked to her, even if I thought she was a racist, to try and at least understand what her background was.
We're jumping ahead a bit, but you know, in your film Skin, the dad character, if you saw him being racist outside, would you go up and talk to him rationally?
No, because I was scared of him.
So because is it just the way she presents herself, you'd be less scared, and that's why you'd talk to her? But again, I think that's your like preconceptions influencing your decision.
Yeah.
Because of
Maybe,
the way
but
she's
I mean,
looked.
like the other character in Skin, like, is a scary person. And like maybe as a woman, I'd be able to like, at least I'd feel like I could relate to her a bit more, and like try and. I mean, again, I might be putting her in a box. I probably am putting her in a box, but I'd still try.
But what I'm saying is, it's less about the scenario that's making you do that. It's the person that's influencing how you react. Because if the woman character did the exact same thing that the guy in Skin does, you would probably still talk to her just because it's her. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I probably agree with Bernie. I probably wouldn't confront the guy in Skin, but I would feel more comfortable confronting her.
Yeah.
And being honest, I wouldn't confront anyone. I'm not a very confrontational person. I'm more of a, I'll just look down and walk away kind of person. What do you think you'd do?
I've just been thinking about that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'd do. It's a hard one. It is definitely a hard one. I feel like I probably wouldn't say anything, but I'd be really affected by it.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard because I've been thinking while you guys have been talking about the scene and how the white woman sort of reacts to this guy and what she says. And immediately you're like, oh, that is such like a liberal, like racism comment. Like you're so unaware about it. And, you know, these girls are just kind of like, you see, like this is what happens every day. And I think like, again, it is about just like their reactive response. And it's not, it is from like an aggressive point of view. It's like out to like get her because she's this. So I don't know. I definitely wouldn't react like them. I don't think I'd be as harsh as them. Yeah.
It's a very brave response of them, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
Brave or foolhardy, I suppose, depending on your point of view.
But I guess from their point of view, is it something that they're just like, well, this is so frustrating. It's happened so many times. Like, how do we make right? How do we confront something without actually being angry? Because she's angry. She gets to scream at the guy. And, you know, so that's like kind of like this weird power play there. Is it right? No. But
she has, there's a line in here that really affected me, and I'm not entirely sure why, which is when after they've done the recording and they're walking away and the woman's following them, and they're like, oh, why did you use that language? And she said, well, I wanted to hurt him. And there's something, I don't know what it is about that line that makes me quite angry, but also makes me feel incredibly sorry for her, that she would have that kind of desire to do that. And it's also quite interesting to go back to like call-out culture in general, and you talk about it online, it feels like so much of the racist and abusive comments that take place online, it's not necessarily, I think some of it is, but it's not necessarily coming from like a completely racist place. I think there's definitely racist views in there, but it's more coming from, I know I can say this and hurt someone.
yes.
Like that's the desire.
Yeah.
And the psychology of that is fascinating to me, and I don't even know how to dig into that in a meaningful way. I just think there's something really, it's a really intelligent line to have in that story.
Deep.
Okay, so our next film is called Night. It was directed by Jose Duck. So 4 college girls, 2 white and 2 black, decide to go out in town, hit up New York City, but there is a bit of a problem as only one of them is actually 21, and so they face some conflicts. Here's a clip.
It's my ID. I'm 22.
Yeah, I'm sorry, love. We don't accept that. Next.
Oh, it's totally legit. I can show you my credit card.
Next.
Oh, you are from here.
Yeah, okay, ladies. It's not gonna happen tonight. Next. Do you not speak English? I said next.
Everything all right?
Hey, just go inside. This is something between this fake ID
It's
and
not
me.
fake. They're with us. We just want to have a fun night.
All right.
Wait, no. Who's so? Thank you.
Always with those ghetto folks.
So Jamie, you brought this one along. Why did it kind of get to you? Why did you bring it along?
So, a couple of things. I think thematically it's really interesting because it feels like the experience of the two girls in terms of like the nightclub bouncer and the guys in the club, their treatment of the two over the time we think of white women isn't overtly racist. It isn't something that you'd immediately be like, oh, that's a horrendous way to do it. It's all these kind of, which is a term the director uses, these microaggressions, I think is quite a common phrase. And so that was a really interesting way of exploring that issue. I also think this is just, in terms of the concept of the film and the way it's brought to life, is so interesting. The way the kind of that twist at the end where you reverse the story and the characters' races are switched is really interesting. Yeah, it was really enjoyable. I thought it was entertaining, it was witty, it was clever, vibrant. Just really enjoyed it and felt like it gave me an insight that I didn't have otherwise.
Anika, yeah, what do you think of the film?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you, Jamie. I'm impressed that's the one that you chose as well. Yeah, I really loved it, and I obviously loved the point where there was that switch.
Yeah.
Very cleverly done. I think it sort of stimulated the conversation in my mind about race versus racism. Like, you know, it's kind of like the societal, racism is societal, and like turning the tables around as people of color and what they've been through, and what, you know, how they sort of have to navigate that in this, you know, over the last how many years, and coming to a point where it's sort of flipped, and like, do, you know, white people really understand what that feels like? And is it something that's racism, or is it like prejudice? Are you feeling bad about like the bouncer thing, or are you immediately going, oh well, because I'm the white girl and the black bouncer sort of said you can't go in? Like, there's this like fine line about it, because I just feel like it made me question, you know, what is racism, and what is that point where I feel bad if someone is treating me, and then I automatically go into this defensive mode of, oh, it's my skin color. Because the thing about racism is that it's something that, it's an institute that really was built to make people feel oppressed and discriminated about. And I think that's the conversation that it had with me, that I was like fighting in my head, is that what it's trying to say? Is that it was okay for the bouncer, it's not okay for the bouncer? Do these white girls have, really understand how they're feeling? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Is it something that was just like their feelings were hurt, or they saying, oh, that was racist? But is that racist?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a really
because what is exactly?
What is? Yeah. Where's the line?
You know, where's that line? And I think when you know, cleverly it's sort of switched and the tables are turned, you get that. Okay. You get a more deeper understanding of where that comes from. And I don't want to give too much away, but what do you think?
Yeah, I really liked it. I found it super relatable, and like, I love how it's exploring all the really subtle racist stuff that happens like day to day, and that I feel like unless you experience, you don't really notice this, like that sort of stuff. I'm not actually 100% sure, because I haven't had many conversations with like my white friends about this sort of stuff. It's stuff that I assume that they don't see or understand, and it's interesting to see a film like depicted like this, where it's split. It kind of shows that maybe you guys do understand more than we or I give people credit for. I
mean, because feelings are feelings, right? But I feel like that's the conversation that stimulated a deeper thought process for me, because yes, it made me realize that, oh, okay, if you look beyond the color thing, people can feel hurt, and they can feel like they don't, that something was wrong. But because I think these really uncomfortable conversations about race and about racism, I think that needs to be explored more. Like, what is race? That's biological, and racism is societal. And so that conversation was happening underneath that for me. And being a person of color, I was kind of like, oh, yay, because there was this perspective that was switched off, that I feel sometimes that my white friends, I'm not able to say, oh, that made me feel weird, or I'm being treated a bit differently because I'm the only person of color in the group, or I didn't realize that they might have felt it in a different way unless you were put in that situation.
Yeah.
And for me, it's something that I have been having a lot of discussions about, is that how do we make today's world, like, you know, white America, even like in South Africa, because we're so, you know, a racist country, and it's been quite political recently about the conversation, is how do we get people who have not really experienced that kind of discrimination and oppression for so long, and it being sort of institutionalized, to really understand what it feels like to be the other.
Yeah.
And that was what it's like really sparked for me, is that unless you're really doing it every single day, and you really truly understand what it's like to be on the other side of it, do you truly really understand?
Just before, I want to do like a call out to like the short films that do talk about issues that, so there's for instance like race, which like these films kind of like open like other, you know, people's eyes and stuff to issues, but there's also like, you know, the films that talk about like, I don't know, the queer ones we talked about, and the, you know, ones that address autism, and like, do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely,
just a massive thank you to the filmmakers who do tell those stories and to like help
us understand
what it's like to be in different situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I just wanted to like, what I think about this film. I really like this film actually. Yeah, I really liked it. I did really like it. I thought that. Let me think. What do I think about this film? What do I actually think?
Do you want to we can all leave. And you can
It did leave a lasting impression.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the film, what's it called? Save the Last Dance.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've watched that film.
Do you know what I love about it? Sorry to just butt in, but what I loved about it is like when it starts off and you know you see the line and she's getting into, it's kind of like, oh, this is so obvious. But actually, as it progresses, it makes you sort of dig through those layers in this very nuanced, like, you know, this nuanced, subtle way. Yeah. And then you're like, ooh, you know, people, the tables are turned here, and it's so weird, and I see another perspective. So that's what I loved about it. It starts off kind of like, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's so like, so not cool, I don't want to say cool, but it's forced into that situation, which is like eye-opening and such, and so that's what I really liked. It put me in a situation that you can't imagine unless you've gone through it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I thought the acting in it was brilliant. I thought the kind of little, one of the things it addresses is like, well, the main thing it addresses is race, but I think the other thing is also kind of like relationships between girls, and like, it kind of like shows like the bitchiness of girls sometimes, and that little like side comments and the little like, oh, you'll never understand, da, da, da. I thought that was like really funny as well.
Yeah, the dynamic is really interesting. I'm going to explain my thought process behind the question I'm about to ask. My girlfriend is Indian, and will occasionally, not very often though, will occasionally make a comment about something like that happening, and I will inevitably have not really been aware. So I suppose my question is this something that you guys feel like you experience quite a lot?
Yes, so I'm in a mixed race marriage, interracial. And yes, and I think this is why I really loved it, is because I think people of color have only really been able to notice what we have been so used to for such a long time, that we would have allowed these comments, and we would have felt that sort of other, but never really had the space to talk about it. And so it's a really fine line, because how would you know, right? How would you know how to correct it if you're not aware of it too? And we've just been given that sort of space to recognize that, ooh, that was a bit, like, that made me feel uncomfortable. Because it's something that's just only really happening now, where we're allowed to talk about it, where we're allowed to recognize it. And how do we make other people, other cultures, other people understand if you're not really like in it and voicing it? But no one has the tools, guys. It's so gray. No one has the tools. Like, what do you do in that situation? Even after you've been told you didn't say anything, or did you recognize that I was in an uncomfortable position? Like, I think it goes both ways. Like, people don't really know how to navigate these conversations.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's just difficult. I don't know if I'm answering that question right, but
that's good. That's really interesting.
Like, going to university in Lancaster, and for people who don't know, Lancaster's a very northern city and quite small city in the UK, and so there's very few black people in Lancaster. I don't think I ever met a black person who wasn't at the university in that town. And so, like, a lot of people just aren't generally exposed to, like, people of different races, and so don't really, like,
know how to respond to that. Yeah.
And so they automatically treat you as like a other, or accidentally at times treat you as an other, just because of you are other to
Yes.
what they've experienced for their entire life. I guess that's like living in any Western country, because of you're the minority, like you're not the norm. It's what a few weeks ago when we were speaking on the LGBT episode, it's about like black not being normal or not the norm because of you're not the majority. And so you get lots of small little things like this film shows, which yes, at times like they don't like ruin your life, but like there's like little things that just like it shouldn't be this way.
It shouldn't be this way. But don't you also think that, you know, in the previous short, and that's why that was so, that line really resonated with me when she recognizes her identity, because that's the other issue, is that people of color are such a minority within these, you know, the groups or areas that are very, you know, white, that when we go in, what we've been taught to do is kind of blend in and fit into, and we become more like westernized, or, you know, if we have education and we speak properly, it's like, okay, you're like changed, or you're better because you speak like not from India in the rural areas. So we fit into this very westernized bubble, which then creates it for everybody, not for just me, but also like my white friends and my surroundings, that I just like fit in, so people don't really recognize me as I'm Indian. It's kind of like I'm just fitting into your white world without having those conversations. So you also become complacent with your comments because that's been allowed. So the things that, you know, that do make us uncomfortable, that we weren't aware about, we're just kind of like, okay, cool. That's the way, that's how it's supposed to be. Am I making sense? Or do I need an example? Like, for example, like now that I'm sort of like unpacking these like comments, like back in the day in South Africa, to go on a date with a white boy was like, ooh, like, oh my God, a white boy's into this Indian girl. And it's, you know,
and that's when the guy's like, you're my type. That's what I feel that's saying. It's just like, oh yeah, most people aren't into your people. So it's a good thing that I'm into you, so you've got to be into me because of, it's like, or like, you're honoured that you should be honoured that
and
you're
she's
my
also
type.
like, you know, intimidated by it, because it's kind of like, ooh, I'm he's attracted to me and I'm different. But for example, like I used to, my white friends back in the day used to say to me, oh my God, like it's weird that the white boys are like totally into you. Why do you think they're into you? And my narrative, because I didn't know better and because that's what I was taught, was, oh, well, I don't know, I think they think I'm like exotic or something. And because that's what was being told to me, because, and so for many years, I would be like, oh, you know, people of other color are into me because I'm different, I'm exotic. And now I'm like, that is the worst thing that I could have ever said to myself. Because that's not true, guys. I'm not exotic. I'm just like a girl with darker skin asking a boy to like me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's those kind of things. And I think that's what this really like brings up, is that you are so conditioned in a certain way into this world of fitting in. And unless you really experience it to an extreme or in an uncomfortable situation, do you get knowledge of the other side or how you are trained to think, because you're so conditioned to think a certain way. So you really, like, we just need to pop our bubbles, basically, and step out of it.
I went to South Africa once, and the first 5 minutes of me being there, I heard 2 racial comments that they just slapped me in the face. So I was picked up by a guy that I was staying on his farm, and he picked me up from the airport, and we were driving along, and there was a white lady who was holding hands with a black guy, right? And he goes, oh my God, I can't even believe, like, how can she date something like that? Or, and he was like, oh, it's disgusting, like, why did you think that's okay? I was not expecting it. Like, I think I'd been, like, warned to kind of, like, you know, that you might hear this kind of stuff, but it was just so open and so kind of, it just, like, slapped me in the face. I was like,
yeah.
Like, but of course, in that, like, I didn't say anything, because in that situation, you're like,
you get scared, right?
Yeah,
you get scared to confront it because you don't really know how they're going to react to you. But again, for him, that was probably, I mean, it's completely out of line and taboo, but that's, for him, it's completely like, oh my word, this is just too foreign. You know?
Yeah, and then I'd literally just got off he was like asking, oh, where have you come from? I was like, I'd just come from Uganda. And so I'd been there for a few months, and he was like, so like, how did you stay there? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, well, you know, like, where did you stay? And I was like, oh, I stayed with, like, you know, the nuns that I was with, and at the orphanage, I was working at an orphanage. And he was like, so they're all black people? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, there was no other white people there? And I was like, no, I was just, you know, I was with them, and, you know, I was like learning their culture and stuff. He was like, how did you do it? Like, how do you live with them? Like, how did you be that close to them?
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, what? Like, I was like, my mind was just blown. Like, and to think that I'd just come from Uganda, where I'd met like the most incredible people and had like the most amazing experiences. And then he just comes along and is like, oh, how could you do that? Like, that's disgusting. And I was like, fuck. Like,
it's just really hard because...
But I know there is such history to it.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I can't even begin to kind of like put myself in his shoes because I have no idea. I've never, you know, I don't know his history, and I don't know, you know.
But it's a lot of what do you accept, and how do we make those like little steps of like progression and really be aware, you know, as a white person and people of color, like on both sides we have a lot of work to do and a lot of like things to sort of dismiss in our minds about, like, we have a lot of unlearning to do, and we really need to, you know, walk that line of like being open to comments, and if it does sort of sit uncomfortably on you, you need to like be open to confront it and have those conversations. Otherwise, we're just never going to move forward.
I think that's the other thing that this film kind of dealt with. At the end, when we're sitting in the cafe and the two black girls, one of the black girls was like, I think that was like a little out of order, and the white girl's like, just because you're black, that doesn't mean everything's racist. It can be really hard to like talk to people about race because people get very defensive.
Absolutely.
When you like, even if you're not calling someone racist, but you're trying to say like that thing was kind of like a
maybe
racist thing to do, or like a little not okay. Like people like get very defensive, and it gets hard to have conversations about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and people think like the minute they hear, you know, you always like angry about something, and they always think that if you want to talk about race and racism, you come from like a decisive, like you want to be mean about it, and it's so not true. So automatically you're already, you know, on the back foot of going, people have switched off because they think that their intention is to just like argue and you know, create more chaos. But guys, we need to create the chaos so that we can navigate through it better, because we've never been able to have these discussions.
Yeah, for sure.
So
At that stage, it's the two. It's difficult to describe the two support characters in this film because it's just whenever they switch. But the two at that stage, they're the two black girls, and they're discussing, oh, well, did you not have a good time? Why didn't you have a good time? Well, that's your fault if you didn't enjoy it. And it feels like such a interesting response to that experience, and an interesting response to that. And I'm sure that's something that has happened to a lot of people. Is like there's a kind of element of you're being selfish by wanting to, you know, you're ruining this for everyone else. Why do you want to do that? I think that was a really interesting characterization to have her respond in that way.
I think it at times comes from a place of like wanting to avoid the subject rather than them trying to be mean. They just like what I like put it to the side.
Yeah,
I don't have to deal with that.
And also, I mean, when they do get into the club, you're like, oh my god, these two white girls are in this like real ghetto R&B, you know, and you can see that they are uncomfortable about it. You see that when the interaction happens. So I think it just points out a lot of us being aware and how we're not integrated enough. We don't understand these worlds, and we really need to like make an effort to get there and not be uncomfortable.
Our third and final film, this podcast, is called Skin. It was directed, produced, and written by Guy Native, and it follows kind of an innocent moment which sends two gangs into a ruthless war that ends with a shocking backlash. Here's a clip.
Were you fucking with my kid? Huh? Were you fucking with him?
He was looking at the toy.
What? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What'd you say?
He was looking at the toy.
Do we have a fucking problem, nigga?
What?
Huh?
You know what?
What's that?
You're my fucking problem.
What's that?
You heard me, man.
I couldn't.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't fucking hear you.
Stupid motherfucker.
With those big fucking lips. What?
Babe, leave it.
It's fine. Hold on a second.
Jeff.
Hold on a second, bud.
Jeff.
You see that black fucking jigaboo who's walking outside
Jeffrey.
right now? He just tried to scare young
Jeff.
Troy and start some shit with me.
Jeff.
Yep.
Leave it.
Stay here.
Jeffrey,
Stay
just
here.
leave it.
Stay right there. Hey,
Jeffrey.
stay right there. Stay there, bud. Stay.
Hey, oh, no. Jeff!
I brought this film along this episode, and I brought it, and I realized that after watching the other two ones, it's very different. The other two ones were trying to kind of like get you to understand or look at the other side or, you know, show different views. This one, I would say, shows you a more traditional side of racism. Does that make sense? It's what you'd maybe expect from a story that deals with racist issues. And it was quite shocking, the reaction that they had in the film, so to this racism and stuff. And I'd never even like come across a concept like this before. And then the ending where the son kind of kills his own father because of his attitudes towards race that his father taught him was just like a cycle that I thought, you know, it's generation to generation to generation. And if you have been taught to be racist and to view like race as like, I don't know, something that you're scared of or it's harmful or something, and teach it to your children, then it's so hard to break that.
So I did enjoy it. Like, it's a really well put together film, and it tells a good story. I don't think it explores race as well as the other ones do, as you said. But not every film about race has to like do that. I feel like what it wanted to do, it did well, and like it does tell like an impactful story. I'm not sure it would change people's minds. So like, if you showed someone who was racist this film, I'm not sure they'd stop being racist or anything like that. No. But it's still something that's like added to the conversation, and I enjoyed it. So I like it.
I think, I agree. I don't think it's something that's going to make you go, oh, I need to stop making racist. But I think it does create this awareness of how, again, conditioning your own biases, that it is sort of this like cyclical thing if you do not break it. And, you know, the impressions that you give generationally, it is so ingrained. The ending is, you know, like complete like, whoa, okay, I get it. That's so crazy if that's how people think. There's this threat, it is an other, like, to understand that conditioning. But I don't know, it also deals with that whole gang thing. It also deals with like reverse racism, you know, vengeful, you know, it's an eye for an eye. Where's the line again, guys? Like, how do we correct this? Like, you know, was it right for that to happen with this gang sort of inking this white man head to toe black? You know, what does that message say?
Was it right, like what they did?
Yeah, I just don't. I understand the message of it, and I really love how it ended, because that is the conversation about white America at the moment. That, you know, that it is extreme. That moment also amplifies like how you know, unsafe it is for black men if you know, and because automatically it's like, I'm threatened by this, but the journey to get there, you know, is it right to have inked this guy black, to have made him experience that? Like, what are we saying? Are we really going to go out and do the same?
Yeah, I guess that's the fundamental like ethical question of the film, right? Is, was it correct? And the broader, I think you touched on it there, the broader kind of social implication of this film is like, how do we prevent this battle from carrying on? How do we break down this divide? Because this is what happens when we allow this divide to be so ingrained. My instinctive view is that this, from a filmmaking point of view, is definitely the strongest. I mean, it definitely feels like the biggest budget. It feels like, you know, it's the most visually interesting. I think the performances are stronger than the other films. Kind of thematically, I think my concern comes from maybe feeling like there's a kind of lack of nuance in the way these two sides are depicted. Mm-hmm. Like it becomes very, very black and white.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's maybe frustrating, and with a few changes to make this a really insightful and interesting film, and there's a missed opportunity there. There's also something interesting about my own psychology, and I think lots of people's psychology. So a big chunk of this film is the kind of redneck family being rednecks, essentially, right? Like we're watching it back on the screen in front of us, and they're shooting the guns, you know, they're driving around in a big truck, and they're being, you know, people from that culture. And I don't understand the psychology of why, because you see that kind of stereotype a lot and brought to life a lot in films, and the psychology of why we enjoy watching that, because they're not empathetic people. They're not people you want to engage with or particularly like. But those kind of scenes, those kind of tropes, are something we see brought out quite a lot in films, and it's interesting to me that we want to see that as much as we can. The thing that is interesting to me is because it feels like it makes the issue of racism much simpler. Because if we can imagine that that's what the other side thinks and that's what they're like, it's much easier to be like, well, they're all just bastards. We don't need to engage with them. They're all terrible.
in the opening scenes, they're trying to make you a little sympathetic to the redneck characters, like because of, you see like the parents loving their son, and like sure
listening
they like
and listening to like, the snake and stuff.
yeah, sure they like do some risky and stupid stuff like letting him shoot a gun and like driving him on the back of the sofa and stuff like that. But like I wouldn't quite call them neglectful. They're just like not the most competent parents.
Okay.
And
That's
so like I feel like they are trying to like, because of you like the kid in the film, like you like
the mum as well. You sort of like, oh, this is normal. They're rednecks, but they're like a normal, loving family. They with their kid. And then you only get that kind of switch in the shop. I think, again, it does really speak of where America is at the moment. And yes, because we see those characters and it might be stereotypical and plays into those, you know, those tropes all the time, but that is what's happening. And there is this sort of divide. And I think those characters, it's because it's not really you know, is it middle America?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not really integrated to it, that there is this sense of bubble and it is the extreme, and that's where it is. It's the kind of like the Bible Belt, and that's where that kind of that's where the conditioning sort of is happening, and it's deep rooted, and I think that's why it comes up and it's portrayed in that way, because there is this strong sense of it being really realistic.
So you do feel like it's reflective of the real world? Because I suppose on my instinctive viewing was that it felt cartoonish. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it really is quite this extreme, and maybe I didn't quite just have quite an awareness of that.
I feel like because you like become friends with people you share ideology with, and then you all like believe your ideology stronger and stronger because you're around those people. So I feel like a lot of racists, they surround themselves with other racists.
Absolutely.
So the idea of racism being bad, it just isn't in their social sphere.
Yeah.
And like that's why it exists.
Like a product of your environment.
Yeah.
Having gone on a recent trip to America, it exists, and it is a very integrated as I thought it was.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's very pocketed, and there is that distinction, and that is I feel very true to what does exist.
I think for me, the main film was about the kid.
Yeah.
And so it didn't tell you. I mean, it's clear that it was trying to tell you that both sides of the family, the one where the guy that got inked black and the rednecks, they were saying that they both dealt with the issues wrongly. I would say that's how I interpreted it. But it's not about that. It's about the kid who is conditioned to be...
Both the kids, yeah.
Both kids, yeah. Conditioned to be racist, and to hate each other. For me, it's a film about a father teaching his son how to kill him, essentially.
Yeah, and you know what's so... also very powerful about this film is that there isn't a conversation between the father and the son about you need to hate black people and we're racist. It's actually just through action.
It's actions, yeah.
And so and that's when that, like, you know, at the end when you realize how powerful it is and how impressionable like the younger generation is, because it's not even in conversation. It's actually through action and practice, and starts within like your home. And and even when on the flip side, the little black boy that sees his dad get beaten up, and then he's full of hate, and then he watches this white man get inked, and it's kind of like, okay, cool, well,
he even watches the kidnapping.
He watches the kidnapping, and he's a little boy, and there's no emotion. He's just like deadpan, and it's just kind of showing you how, like, you know, hate on hate, does it? Where is that line?
And like you said, like it was all through action. I think they set that action up really well. So before, you think it's quite a long build up until the actual like main action bit where the guy beats up the black guy. But actually, all that build up was showing how the kid is so influenced by his father, and how much he admires his father, and how much he cares so much about his father's praise and making his mom and dad proud and stuff. And so, in his eyes, at the very end, he would be doing what would make his father proud. And
and also, you know, like you said, you quite like, oh, you look at them, what a lovely family, the dad's so loving, he's cutting the boy's hair, like it's just a very normal family. So the switch is only when the person of color comes in, and then you see this sort of aggression, and you see this kind of like, oh my god.
One of my favorite bit between the parents and the kid is when the kid is telling him about the snake. I think it's a snake. And he goes into so much detail, and you can see that the parents don't really care, but they stick and they listen to him and they ask questions, and like it's such a heartwarming moment.
Objectively, I think this film probably does humanize them, but I think on my view, the rednecks kind of felt cartoonish and two-dimensional. And now I'm considering whether it was my own prejudice that was making them like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that was actually more my issue than the film's issue, which is interesting.
But then that's exactly what this film is.
Yeah.
Right? The
Challenge your
preconceptions and
preconceptions.
exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like the film's biggest success is to show you how easy it is to pass on ideologies to different generations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now you think, people all our age, like, oh, they wouldn't be racist. Like, we're the 25th, we're millennials. Like, you can't conceive for a 4-year-old to be racist. But this film shows, like, no, it is conceivable.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in certain settings, you do automatically pick up your parents' views and ideologies. And so it might even make you think about your parents' views and ideologies, because there's definitely ones that my parents have that I disagree with. But, when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have disagreed with them. It's not only when I'm older that I'm like, actually, no, that's not right. And
Absolutely. It does really strengthen the thing about like being a product of your environment.
Yeah.
And I think, taking it like just from a personal point of view, apartheid South Africa, my parents were obviously under apartheid and lived in a very, just like, a segregated Indian community. My brother and I were like the first generation to be able to go to a multiracial school and to have higher education. And we then lived in another area that was multiracial. And that shift alone from going into a multiracial school, living in a multiracial area, had such an impact on my thinking that my parents sometimes would be like, oh, we didn't think about it like that. And it wasn't their fault, but it was just because they were just the product of that environment.
Yeah,
so it
for
takes
sure.
a lot of like changing and having these discussions and putting yourselves in situations where you just feel like, I need to really learn, ask my friend the questions that I'm really uncomfortable to ask.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you just like so conditioned in the same sort of like thinking and environment, and it's just all so like impressionable that you tend to carry that with you and then pass it down. Unless you break it, and consciously you have to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's why one of the things that I don't think we necessarily do enough with children is teaching them real critical thinking skills and challenging their preconceptions and being able to adopt new ideas and stuff. You've mentioned a few times about like how do we begin to break down these ideas and how do we begin to break down these barriers and resolve these issues. And I think a really meaningful step towards doing that would be if everyone was in a position where they were willing to challenge their own ideas and listen to others and be comfortable with being wrong and accepting that the things that you accept are true aren't necessarily always true. And it feels like that in schools and just in generally most people's childhood, they aren't given the opportunities to do that, and they aren't necessarily given the skills to do that because of the way like the school curriculum is set up. You have this emphasis on you being right in a test or you being accurate about things. And that's not always necessarily the most important thing. Actually, as you learn as you're an adult, the more important thing is being able to engage with other people and see what you can learn from them.
I'd say that probably that it would have to be our generation that enforces that.
Oh, yeah,
Because I feel like
absolutely,
the current generation who are in like government and who are ahead of that kind of decision making, they are kind of taught not to teach people those kind of skills.
Yeah.
Purely because the past 100 years, which kind of forced people, encourage people not to think about being free and to not question the government that they're in.
You've kind of encouraged people to embrace the subjectivity of it, I think, and embrace the subjectivity of the world.
The way that the school system works, like, it kind of discourages critical thinking anyway, because like you're taught like science, you're taught it says this in the maths book, so you've got to believe it because the maths book tells you it's right.
Absolutely.
And so like it would change the way that you'd have to teach people like altogether.
Yeah, I think if it is going to be like our generation, I think that, and if you stuck in a place where you just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not really understanding this, but I think it just starts with, if you find yourself in a group of friends that you come from the same sort of social background, you're the same skin color, you really need to make an effort and maybe go down to the bookstore or sit at the coffee shop and say hi to someone that you feel might be different to you and have those conversations. You know, I think that you need to like volunteer or speak up for something. And I think it's like an actively, it comes by like an individual.
Yeah.
Like it has to start with you, and you have to change those things. If you find yourself that is like surrounded by an environment that is just too familiar, then you need to change that.
And I think if you've got a friend who you often disagree with, you should get into more debates with them and try and like get each other to understand each of like your interpretations of the world. Because I've got so many friends who like some are conservative, some are Labour, and like they don't want to have conversations about politics, they know they're just going to get into a big debate, but that would benefit both of them so much.
Absolutely.
I feel like
Yeah, absolutely.
that mentality is what people need.
Well, thank you so much, Arnica, for being on today. You've offered so much insight, and it's been an absolute, like, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. And, like, just discussing this all and being so open about it. Like, yeah, no, it's been really, really cool having you on.
Thank you.
So
I
much.
think there needs to be more spaces created where we can discuss and be open
Yeah.
and honest about it. This was amazing, guys. Thank you so much. What a way to end my Sunday.
No, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you guys as well for listening, for being part of this conversation. Please, continue this conversation. Send us any other films that you think explore race in quite an unusual way or in a different way. To keep the conversation going, get in touch with us on social media at The Short Film Podcast. You can get in touch with me on Instagram at Bernie Bange. Matthias?
I'm on Instagram as well at Matthias Jan.
Jamie?
I'm on Twitter. I still don't know my handle.
And Arnica, if people want to get in touch with you, where's the best place to do it?
Instagram at Arnica Miakista.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
You've also started a company recently.
Oh, yes, I did.
What's the name?
It's Ector Pictures Limited, guys. Everything's on my Instagram. So all the information is in the bio. So
Go check it out. Yeah, awesome. We will see you next time. But for now, thank you so much for listening and keep watching short films.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.